This video is sponsored by GLASSBOW Languages Learning Service. Stay tuned until the end of the video to find out more. So a quick forward for some of you that are wondering where the year-end list videos are. I have good news and bad news. Bad news is they won't be coming out in video form. I spent most of my December, praying for finals and working on the Ready Player One video. And when I finally uploaded that video, I was like, okay, I should get started on this year-end list, even though I start much earlier. I didn't want to upload this in February or March, so yeah, those videos aren't coming out. The good news, however, is that you can catch my entire ranking of 2018 on Letterboxd, which you should also follow me on. It not only has my top 10 favorite and least favorite, but it also has mini reviews on the other 40 movies that I watched this year. So go check that out and follow me there to see me post reviews you probably won't catch on my channel. So without further ado, on with the video. Now, I'm not saying this as someone who read the original book because I haven't read the book. I'm also not really saying this as someone who's necessarily a giant Ava Duvernay fan, but I do recognize her talents. I mean, it's been a while, but I remember Selma being pretty good. I say this as someone who loves good movies. This was hot fucking garbage, and it seriously confuses me how a talented director like Ava Duvernay just said, yeah, no, this is fine, send it out, let's get this bread. It's crazy too because I looked at the trailer and I mean, it kind of had me on the edge. But at the same time, my only thought was they might clean up the VFX when the movie rolls around. Be fine. But then again, that's what I thought when Black Panther rolled around, and yeah, ain't shit changed with that. And then you watch the movie and find out the VFX is almost the least of its problems. To be honest, the biggest thing that shoots this movie in the ass is its plot. I mean, nothing else in this movie is even close to being good. But this story is something else. To the point where I'm just gonna tell you everything that happens in the plot. In order. Like the olden days. Disclaimer, everything I'm about to say to you, I did not exaggerate. That much. I feel as though I need to tell you that because this shit can kinda get bonkers. The movie is about a girl searching for her father after he disappears, and she has to go on all these perilous journeys through different dimensions to find him. I mean, it sounds kind of dope, right? No. For one, we open up with a pacing issue in the first minute. In this poorly edited sequence, we see Chris Pine and his daughter Meg working in a lab that ends with a random-ass time jump to 4 years later. I mean, you'd think this would be a good spot to put the scene where they show the father disappearing, to jumpstart the plot. But nah, let's just save it for later for some reason. What, a pace, a flow? What the fuck are those? Well, since this movie didn't do it, I guess I might as well talk about it here. Her parents are both astrophysicists on the verge of solving the reason behind our existence. Which, to be fair, is a great question. Why the fuck are we on this earth? We endure all this dumbass shit for ultimately what reason? To love? To die? Well, the latter is too dark for this movie, I guess, so they go with the safer, sappier, cliched, and more eye-rolling option. He finds out later that the machine that can help them test it to new dimensions is also the same reason for our existence. Love.
Love. That's the frequency.
Now listen. I love love. One of my favorite movies of all time is about love. And as hard as it is to believe, I can appreciate cheesiness. I'm a firm believer that Paddington 2 is not only one of the best movies of 2018, but is one of the best of this entire goddamn decade. Cheese in those movies are like melted cheese, like the kind you'd find in a panini or something, A Wrinkle in Time's cheese is like those nasty-ass Kraft singles. So yeah, he finds this out and the universe kind of goes, oh shit, he knows too much. And he literally disappears off the face of the earth, leaving his wife, his daughter, and his adopted son named Charles Wallace. So, do you love how that name sounds? Doth your heart swoon at the way that name just rolls off the tongue?
Say it again, Dexter.
Charles Wallace.
The amount of times that they say Charles Wallace in this movie is astounding. Not Charles, not Chuck, not Chucky, not Charlie, not Wallace, not Wally. Charles Wallace.
This is a lot of milk, Charles Wallace.
Charles Wallace. You're next, Charles Wallace.
Charles Wallace. What do we need diplomacy for, Charles Wallace?
It feels like they're shitposting with the amount of times they say it. Like, hey, guess how many times they say the name Charles Wallace and you get fuck all for doing so, you weird ass. And as you'll also see, this kid's acting is not very good.
That's my new word for the day. Exclusive.
Do you like it?
I mean, no one in here is good, but he's like the worst offender, to the point where it completely overshadows any character he could have had. However, I know that this isn't necessarily his fault, it's the filmmakers for giving so little of a shit. I mean, again, all these jokes about him and the other kids are just in good fun, so... with that said, fuck them kids. We see Meg and Charles go to school, and as usual, they're the kids that are always bullied and looked down upon, except here, even the teachers are talking shit about them.
And Meg used to be so engaged, and now she is a mess.
But the boy is brilliant.
Absolutely brilliant.
But odd, so odd.
I guess I would be too if my dad ran away, huh?
Yeah, you know how your middle school teachers always used to be some gossiping ass shitbags? Also with this scene, we see that the weak ass Radio Disney soundtrack is doing what the actor / score should be doing. Conveying emotion, like another movie we all know and love. Here though, it hurts it a bit more because it interrupted scenes that had a decent flow. Like at some point the movie was actually tolerable, like in the scene where he first discovers what powers this tesseract machine, until you had Sia going. Later that night, we get introduced to one of the goddesses of the movie that Charles was apparently speaking to for a while now. And the next day, Charles and Meg go to visit one of the other goddesses at their house with a classmate who just tags along. And if you think me including the classmate there kind of seemed like a footnote, that's how he enters the movie.
What are you doing here?
I don't know.
He literally doesn't even know why he's there. The jokes are writing themselves, you guys. We got like one shot of him earlier before the movie decides he's gonna be a supporting character for some reason. And at the same time, he is so goddamn pointless. Yet this will probably be the last time I ever really talk about him. His only piece of development, he has an abusive and controlling father. That's it. Otherwise, he's in the far back of this ugly ass minivan. So they go to this other goddess's house and she's apparently so advanced that she just speaks in quotes from other people.
She's just evolved past language, so when she needs to think, she cheats and uses other people's words.
Is that how that works? If your vocabulary was so advanced, wouldn't you be able to come up with ideal shit to say that you thought up and not someone else? I'm just saying, if that's the case, then Michael Scott is one of the most advanced beings in existence. Eventually, all three of the goddesses break into their backyard in one of the most whimsical examples of home invasion I've ever seen, with Oprah breaking in last minute because she took a long time to fade in.
Come on, Mrs. Witch, show yourself.
She's still loading her textures, and Charles, be patient. Speaking of textures, this is where they start tesserating into different dimensions, which is where the VFX nightmare starts, so might as well bring it up here. Now, as you'll see in future reviews, we can see people do amazing things on small budgets. And that's because the makers behind these movies went, okay, let's try to do as much as we can with the limited resources that we have. With A Wrinkle in Time, I'm convinced that they did the complete opposite, and just drown as much as we can in the VFX, even if it looks awful or has no point. This movie doesn't have the gigantic budget it needs to pull these VFX off at all, to the point where I swear to you, you can see the green screen reflection off this kid's face. This looked so lousy that I looked up B-roll footage just to see if they really filmed this whole movie on a soundstage like I thought, but nope, it looks like a considerable amount of this was filmed on a location. It just looks like fucking trash. Nothing looks convincing, even the practical effects. Plus the direction for some of these scenes are just off. Again, for the entire movie, the direction in it is awful. But this scene in particular is probably the direction at its most strained. Oh, look at Oprah just kinda standing there. Oh, look at them all having fun in this green screen bouncy house that they probably made. You know what this scene was missing though? Tonal whiplash. Yeah, I just straight up nearly killed the kid from that Peter Pan movie we all forgot, which wanted a natural pace throughout this movie. It's a little bit too late to be asking for it now, so they all have to go to Zach Galifianakis, and after painful dialogue between him and Mrs. What's-Her-Name, he explains what the main antagonist is, the It, which is pretty much the embodiment of evil. Apparently, this force just straight up will turn people against each other and make them hateful. It'll also make the movie look like another director took over. Like, you see this too, right? The visual style went from looking all, like, colorful and everything, a fucking Jason Bourne movie. Anyway, back to this whole It thing. If that idea sounds familiar of a greater power making all of us hateful inside and starting wars and all that, that's because the same idea was done in Wonder Woman, and it's just as ridiculous here as it was there. I don't even want to say why it is because Chris Pine said it in Wonder Woman. They literally explained why that mindset was bullshit in the movie that had that bullshit. Sorry, random Wonder Woman tangent. I mean, I still like that movie, but man, that third actor's awful. They find out that Meg's father is deep inside the It, and they need to get him out, which is where my criticism for the goddesses come in. Now, these characters are quite prominent in the posters and the advertising, but the impact that they have on the story as a whole is embarrassingly small. As soon as they find out that they need to go to the It, they're like, nah, we can't go in because there's no light inside and we operate on fucking solar power, apparently.
We can only tesser where we find light, for we are light. Camazotz is all darkness.
and they peace off for the rest of the movie until after the giant fight, where they teleport into the exact area that they said they couldn't come in. But before they fade away, they do warn them that they will stumble across some tests, specifically a giant storm, which is, to be fair, is a fair test, 50 steam suburbia, okay, and obviously dangerous strangers offering food at crowded beaches. One of them falls for that one. This dude then lures the smartest kid in the trio through multiplication. I wish I were making that up.
Simple as twice 1 is 2, twice 2 is 4, twice 3 is 6, twice 5 is 10, twice 6 is 12, twice 7 is 14.
What are you doing?
And now poor Charles Wallace is under the influence of the It. Anyway, time to find her dad. Again, focus? I don't know what else to tell you, man. I use this bit like 3 fucking times. So she finally meets her dad, and, I mean, hang on, what's this? Oh my god, that actually looks gorgeous. Oh, and what's that? The scorn actors are actually doing their jobs. And they're doing them really well. It's a good scene. By Jove, it's a good scene. It took them like 75 minutes, but we got it. We got one. For like a minute, but we got one. Anyway, fun's over. We go back to Charles being evil, and, well, unsurprisingly, I don't buy it for a second.
Charles Wallace isn't here right now.
Ladies and gentlemen, the most adorably ineffective villain I've ever seen. So the It decides to try and coax her onto their side by offering to turn her into what they define her as her best self, because apparently she was self-conscious. Again, if that's news to you, welcome to the fucking club. The movie has this moment where they go, will she or won't she? But here's the thing, she hasn't given any indication that she'd make a decision like this. In fact, she's the only person who didn't even remotely fall for any of these challenges, so she's fine, nothing to worry about there. So much to no one's surprise, she says no, and ends up screaming how much she loves Charles while, you know, getting the shit beaten out of her by the It. This gets the It out of his system, and, oh yeah, by the way, that was the big climax of the movie. No, seriously. There's like, what, 10, 15 more minutes? Okay. They then test her back to Earth, reunite with the mother. He goes to confront his father, which we never see. His only character arc, and we don't even see how that ends. Okay. And the movie ends. All this happens in the last 10 minutes. This somehow feels like the most rushed, yet slowest ending at the same goddamn time. How is that possible? The ending was twice as long as the climax. How do you do that? Whatever though, movie over. So in a movie filled with horrible effects, direction, acting, music, story, plot, and pacing, believe it or not, the dialogue in this movie is also god-awful.
Dang. Tucker, American.
Disgusting!
However, the god-awful script also becomes a lot more confusing when you see who actually wrote it. The same writer behind this also wrote Zootopia, Wreck-It Ralph, and Frozen, which are all great. Plus, this movie isn't an RPO situation where the book is known for being an embarrassingly written neckbeard fantasy. The worst I've seen this book called was just weird, which isn't inherently bad at all. I'd much rather prefer something weird and out there than embarrassing and dull. I've also heard that A Wrinkle in Time is just an unfilmable concept, which is partially true. Again, I can't verify it because I haven't read the original book or even watched the adaptation Disney made back in 2003 that they also botched apparently. But it's only unfilmable if you give the filmmakers this small of a budget, or if you get directors and writers on their off days, which is clearly what happened here. It can probably be enjoyed ironically if you just watch it with friends to mess around, but that's unfortunately the only scenario where I can find anyone enjoying it.
Shut up, Meg.
Yeah, shut up, Meg.
Well, just because A Wrinkle in Time doesn't translate well to the big screen, that doesn't mean that you have to not translate. Well, yeah, that's good. This video is sponsored by GLASSBOW, the ultimate resource to learning a new language. It gives you retranslated versions of over 100 pieces of classic literature, including Alice in Wonderland, Pride and Prejudice, and much more, available in both physical and ebook copies. Can I get a Zooey Mama in the chat? Not to mention, it offers countless other resources to learn more about not only the language, but the culture behind it. But if you want to dive into those books and help support the channel in the process, go to glassbow.com now and use promo code WALK at checkout for 20% off your order. You're welcome. Thank you to GLASSBOW for sponsoring this video. Thank you for watching this project. And thank you, Anderson .Paak, for making Oxnard. That album was awesome.
As soon as I put this on